Well, good morning. This is Ian R. Crane. Today is Thursday, the 11th of January 2018. And I'm back at the Mission Springs Protection Camp. As you can see, right now there's just a handful of people here as we build the camp. But I haven't been here very much over the last couple of days because I've been running errands, getting kit to the camp that we need to become established. But the support that we've had from the local community is truly outstanding. We've, I think, pretty much met with all the neighbours, and whilst they're not exactly ecstatic that we're here, they completely understand why we're here. And even the farmer who takes hay from the field here has come by and acknowledged the right to protest, and you know, we are working with him to ensure that he can maximize as much harvest from the field as he possibly can, so we will sort of minimize our impact. So this is quite possibly the most welcoming reception that we've had at any protection camp to date. And I think this is indicative of the rising awareness amongst the general population that this really is an abomination. And you know, very few people actually understood a few years ago what was occurring. And it's exactly 5 years ago that I was putting the finishing touches together on the Fractured Future presentation, which was a presentation that I took around the country in the first half of 2013, simply trying to plant seeds and encourage people to take a look at what this industry had done elsewhere in the world and consider the potential impact if this industry rocked up in their community or, you know, not too far away. And whilst, you know, the pro-frackers tend to say, oh, this is just NIMBYism. Well, so what? You know, the reality is that, you know, for some people, they have very busy lives, and, you know, they don't have the opportunity to take too much interest, perhaps, in what's occurring 50, 100, 200 miles away from where they live and where they're raising their family. When the prospect of this turns up in their backyard, then they start to take an interest. And you know what we've seen here up and down the road on Springs Road here, once again there are a disproportionate number of properties for sale. But the reality is these people are prisoners. They are prisoners of the unconventional gas industry, because unless they're prepared to sell their property at a greatly reduced price, and as we've seen in North Yorkshire, in a village that's 2 or 3 miles or so away from, well, probably 2 miles from the well site to Great Hampton, somebody was trying to rent out their property so that they could move their family away from the area, and the estate agents, Hunters, which is associated with Kevin Hollinrake, the local MP, advised them that they would have to be prepared to take a significantly reduced rental than what had been the going market rate due to the presence of the Barclays Bank trading as Third Energy well site at Kirkby Misperton. So the people here along this road are prisoners to iGas, just as the people at Kirkby Misperton are prisoners to Barclays Bank. So, you know, if this is what motivates people, and I must confess that when I was, you know, doing the Fractured Future tour, and I would show examples of the damage to the environment, the land, the contamination of soil, contamination of the air, the impact on livestock, the increasing evidence suggesting that there were significant negatives to health, and people would sit there going, oh, that's terrible, it's really, really bad. And then I would show the impact on house prices, and that would get their attention. And it used to frustrate me that, you know, it was the materialistic element that got people's attention. But ultimately, so what? Whatever it is that gets people's attention. And if it's the impact on their property prices that actually triggers them to do their own research and actually come to their own determination as to why this impacts on their property prices, and if that's what motivates them to get involved, so be it. Because once they do start to get involved and they do start to take a look, they will realize that the impact on their immediate environment and the wider landscape is so significant that they cannot not get involved. And this is something that, once people have seen it, they can't unsee it. And what we see, of course, within the industry is classic examples of cognitive dissonance. It's amazing what the brain can be taught to ignore if you think your financial well-being is dependent upon you ignoring the prima facie evidence. And that is why whenever there is any public debate, those representing the industry are on a hiding to nothing, because there is absolutely nothing that they can say, nothing that they can present that will convince those who have done the research that they are telling the truth, because they're not. They are blatantly lying. Although, it's a psychological condition, because they actually convince themselves that they're not lying. I mean, these people do genuinely believe that, we have gold standard regulation in this country, because if they say it to themselves over and over and over, then it becomes a dogma, and they are locked into that belief system. And I'm sure they go to sleep at night thinking, gold standard regulation, gold standard regulation, gold standard regulation. And, if they just trot it out often enough, and, in the national media, then, people are going to believe it. Wrong. That's why in a recent poll, 82% of those polled said that they did not trust the BBC. And rightly so, because the BBC is a prima facie propaganda tool of the corporatocracy. And every now and again, of course, it goes against the establishment on something that's not particularly significant, just to make it look like it's a balanced media outlet. So the bottom line is that almost anything that the BBC labels as fake news, you can bet your bottom dollar that there's probably more truth to it than anything that the BBC are putting out. And that's why people are refusing to pay their TV license fee in absolute droves. Nearly 1 million people a year are refusing to pay their TV license, and rightly so. Why would you ever want to pay to have propaganda thrust down your throat? How Orwellian is that? And of course, it's the same with the print runs from the mainstream media. Their distribution, the circulation is falling like the proverbial rock off the edge of a cliff, because people are realizing that actually the smart thing to do is to spend a little bit of time looking at multiple sources and then using their own powers of discretion to determine what they believe to be the facts. And then of course they can continue to do their research. And it's important to maintain an open mind, so that obviously if evidence is presented that changes the view, then albeit, so that we're not locked into dogma, which is why I always encourage people to do their own research. Now, we're very much at the front end here at Mission Springs. It's going to be a long campaign, and I'm sure that iGas are very well aware. It seems that every morning they send somebody up here to take a quick look at how many people are on the camp. They literally drive up, spin around, and then drive back. So they're reporting somewhere as to how many people are here. Well, it's early morning, but if they come around lunchtime, then they'll see a lot more activity. They'll see a lot more local people coming by, sharing their concerns with us, and also doing everything they can to make sure that we're as comfortable as possible in this field at Mission Springs in North Nottinghamshire. Of course, at Kirkby Misperton, today is the 65th day since the application to frack was submitted by Barclays Bank, trading as Third Energy, at Kirkby Misperton. And Greg Clark, of course, was hoping that by now he would be out of the job, and you could give it to, Teresa was going to give the job to Jeremy Hunt. I'm sure there's a misspelling in his name there somewhere, but can't quite put my finger on it. But Jeremy Hunt, of course, would have just signed it straight off, because the guy is an out-and-out sociopath. And, you know, basically anybody who wants to challenge that, you know, let's have a public debate on it, because let's look at the evidence. Let's look at how he is deliberately destroying the NHS in association with Common Purpose. And I'm going to start introducing Common Purpose because I do want people to do their own research here. You know, Common Purpose is 30 years old this year, and it's an insidious charity that works with whomever is in government, and the purpose is to bring about change, to create an environment for change. And that change is not for the benefit of you or me, it's for the benefit of the collectivists. It's to create a much wider, already increasingly wide, gap between the extremely, outrageously, obscenely wealthy and those who are literally slaves to the corporate state because they can't actually make a living. But Jeremy Hunt didn't get the job. He supposedly dug his heels in, which of course was what was attributed to Greg Clark. So spin it around, you know, that's the propaganda. And Greg Clark is still probably crying into his morning breakfast to try and comprehend how it is that he is still holding this political grenade. Now, call it a hunch, but there's a possibility that he might sign this off as soon as tomorrow, because now that he's back in the job, he's absolutely got to make a decision. And you know, I will be back at Kirkby Misperton, hopefully, to party, because you know, if Greg Clark decides to do the right thing and refuse Barclays Bank permission to frack at Kirkby Misperton, then there is no question the villagers of Kirkby Misperton, the residents of Rydale, and the people of North Yorkshire will be having a massive party. But if he gives the go-ahead to frack, then obviously there will be much commiseration with the people of Kirkby Misperton, and I would implore people from all over the country to descend upon Kirkby Misperton. 1, to witness the frack, but 2, to see for themselves what the British government is determined to do to a massive tract of land right across the country, from the Yorkshire coast right across to the Lancashire coast, and of course in pockets across the south of England. So not much more that we can do at Kirkby Misperton at the moment except wait and visualise that equipment leaving the well site without having performed the job that it was brought in to do. And let's see what happens from that point. Well, meanwhile, obviously, Miston Springs here, you know, we're at the very front end of the campaign. iGas just up the road here, literally about half a mile to the north, and a few miles to the southwest at Tinker Lane. They're in the process of constructing their pads. Now, hopefully, iGas will emulate Quadrilla, and this project, which is supposed to, you know, take, I think, about 8 months or so. Hopefully it'll take a lot longer. Of course, in Lancashire, Quadrilla are now in the 13th month of a 6-month project, with no sign of reaching a completion anytime soon. And that's what we need to be doing all around the country. Now, I know there are many, many other issues, and I know that many of you watching would like me to touch on some of those issues, and I am pleased to say that after 5 years, you know, people within the anti-fracking community who came to this because it was something that gave them concern, but it was the first time in their lives that they'd ever had cause to question orthodoxy, to question the veracity of their elected leaders. But because they're starting to realise the magnitude of the lies and the deceit and the obfuscation associated with this industry, they're starting to say, well, hang on a second, if they're lying to us about this, what else are they lying to us about? And so in many respects, fracking is an absolute gift. It's a gift to humanity because it's helping humanity to wake up to the fact that they have been deliberately treated as mushrooms, fed and kept in the dark. But now they're starting to see that light, And this is a portal, it's a massive portal. And people are starting to actually wake up to the wider reality. So meanwhile, let's keep doing what we need to do. If Greg Clark does succumb to the enormous pressure that's on him to sign off on the frack at Kirby Misperton, then let's make sure there are literally thousands of people at Kirby Misperton to witness that unfortunate historic moment that potentially triggers the demise of Northern England and ultimately the UK. Because as Brian Monk says so often in Queensland, Australia, where they're sitting in the middle of over 20,000 fracked wells in what was once prime farmland and is now totally unusable, where at least one farmer has committed suicide as a result of the devastation that this industry has caused to his land and therefore to his business. It started with just one well, and potentially that well is the well at Kirby Misperton. And even if it does go ahead, we have to make sure that we maximise the opportunity to get people to see that unless they actually step up to the plate and step out of their apathy, then this could well be coming to a field very near them. So the British government works on the basis of consent. We are supposedly a democracy that is based on consent. Well, the only way they get consent is through apathy. And your government is very, very grateful for your apathy. Thanks for joining me today, and I will catch you at 8:30 tomorrow morning from Miston Springs Protection Camp. You have a great day.